What is going on, everybody? We're in the backyard right now because we're going to show you guys how I built this ballast box. This is a category 1 3-point hitch ballast box that goes on Jonathan the tractor. 660 pounds, cost me 60 bucks to put together. Alrighty, we are in the barn and it's a little bit darker out here because we don't have as many lights as inside the shop, but I got the tractor in here. I got the 3-point on there. We got to take some measurements, and then I'm going to be using all scrap metal that I had laying around from previous kitchen table and bench builds. I do understand that those that don't have a tractor, this is not going to appeal to you, but I looked around quite a bit looking for some plans or design for something like this, and I didn't see it. So that is why I'm making a video. I should clarify that I was able to find a few basic measurements, but nothing that I was really comfortable just start whacking some metal together to see if it fits. So I did bring the tractor in, took some measurements off of that, and actually as I started cutting metal, putting the 3-point pins in place and whatnot, I actually made some modifications. So I'm glad I kind of built this on the fly, and I'll at the very least have a quick sketch that can be downloaded, linked down in the description below if you guys want something like this. It will fit on any category 1 3-point hitch regardless of the tractor type. So I selected some metal that I had laying around left over from past projects because metal is outrageous, as I said before, and plywood's right behind that, ridiculously priced at the moment. So I guess if you had to buy the metal and buy the wood to make the concrete form, it might add up a little bit, but I did get out of this build for 60 bucks in my book. So I cut up some 2-inch angle on my portable bandsaw there, and then I also have some 1x2 rectangular tubing, which is going to make up the ends that the pins actually attach to. There's a little bit of 2-inch square tubing that's going to be included, as well as some 1.5-inch strap. Again, all scrap that I had laying around. Once I got all the pieces cut like I needed, I took things into the shop where I made sure I didn't have any sharp burrs, and then it was over to the drill press, which is a tool that I don't use very often, but for something like this it's really quite invaluable, makes the process much easier. I'm using some tapping oil to make sure my drill bits don't get too hot as I am drilling these holes. Drilling smaller and working my way up to make sure I get the holes exactly where I want them. These are going to be the blocks that hold the 3-point pins, so there's going to be a big old thread that goes through this end. I think it's something like 7/8 of an inch is the hole that needs to be cut. So I cut them, I drilled them in sequentially larger holes using regular high-speed drill bits, and then moved over to a step bit to move up to the final size. And this, I needed to make sure I slowed the drill press way down, and then it still took a lot of force to push this through, and I did go through one of these bits as it was completely doled out. I do believe this gold one that I'm using here was something that I got from Harbor Freight back in the day, so it doesn't surprise me that it's not the highest quality. I did move over to a Irwin one later on, and it gobbled right through the metal. A little bit of cleanup internally with a file, something I couldn't get with the angle grinder, and then made sure we had a good fit on all of our pieces. Once we had all those holes on the drill press done, we're going to move outside into the shop, and it is cold, so we got a nice little fire going, and we should have a good time. I do want to have a warning, lots of flashing lights here from the welding, so if that bothers you, please skip ahead until we're done welding and join us to finish up the video. So what are we doing? We are tacking all the pieces together, making sure everything is nice and square, because we do need to have the pin square so that we get good motion on this ballast box when all is said and done. So I tacked everything into place. I didn't want to lay long beads down at this point, because what if we have to move something? Moving over to the tractor itself, once I got those pins in place, we need to make sure the vertical extension is properly measured so that we can get good motion up and down and everything stays nice and vertical, which is what we want. Once we had that location knocked down and pinned into place, it was time to tack weld the whole portion of the ballast box frame together before putting our long beads of final weld into place. I wanted to do it this way again to make sure I could get everything nice and square before firmly welding it together. And then as I did that welding, you want to make sure you move from one side to the other, up and down, side to side, and whatnot, so that you don't add too much heat in one location, possibly pulling things out of square and making quite the disaster. So once I had everything tacked together, we went ahead and did all of that welding. And I do like welding. It's very contrary to everything that I do with wood and what I do at my real job, in which case sparks are not a good thing. But welding is just cool. You have so much power right in the palm of your hand, and it's so final. You put it in, you can do a little bit of grinding, and it's done. You don't have to wait for glue to dry. It's just together and you are ready to go. You want to make sure you have good surfaces to weld on those, so use your angle grinder liberally. You want to make sure you have any paint removed, you want to make sure you have rust removed, and you have plenty of contact and open area for your welding wire to fill in the gaps and make sure you get a good weld. And I am not a welder. I can make metals stick together, and I am getting a little bit better with the beads that I lay down nowadays. But if you want to look at a welding YouTube channel and actually learn how to do it, this is not the place. I can just DIY the metal together. I do gotta say though, when I do lay a pretty nice bead down, it's pretty cool, and I am getting better with various different patterns to make the MIG weld bead look slightly more like a stack of dimes, like a TIG weld can typically do if you're good. I can't do that with TIG welding either, but it is a good time, I will not deny. So we got our metal frame done. Weighs about 15 pounds, doesn't do us much good, so we need to make ourselves a box so we can fill this entire thing up with concrete. Now, I'm using some scrap T111 that was left over from when we built the chicken coop, and T111 is not very cheap either, so I wouldn't recommend using this if you had to go buy a piece of material to do this, but it is what I had, so it didn't cost me any money. Cut that down on the table saw using some glue and 18 gauge Brad's nails to assemble and build our box, in which we will fill with concrete. Once I had a portion of the box together, I actually set the metal frame in there with some spacers to hold it where we need the final frame to be mounted in the box to make sure our pin location is just right. Because you don't want these pins to be all the way at the bottom, otherwise your 3-point will never go low enough to be able to pick up the ballast box. So I marked those out, cut them with the jigsaw, and then we are getting ready to put things in their final place. So we need to make sure that the frame itself does not allow concrete to fill in that receiver tube for the hitch that we wanted to put in place. So get that sucker set into place, and then we need to put it back on this. So I'm going to actually do it in 2 pieces so that we can thoroughly surround that receiver tube and add a support piece in the middle, basically making one longer board. This kind of has to be done this way because, as you can see, that receiver hitch has a lip on it, so you wouldn't really be able to get anything around it any other way. You don't want to leave those spacer blocks that are holding the metal frame in there because that's going to leave an indent in our concrete. So what I did was drill a screw from the inside to the outside, and then I spun it around and removed that screw and actually put it in from the outside in. So once we pour the concrete and it has cured a little bit, we can either undrive that screw, remove that screw, or we can just pull the paneling off and the screw will probably come with it. Also, you got to remember that where our pins are going to be mounted is not a closed tube. It's open on the other side. So we want to make sure we have those pins nice and tight, the nut locked in tight, and that will prevent the concrete from seeping out. Add a little bit of caulk around any gaps that we might have just to make sure we don't make ourselves a disaster. And you can notice right here that I did spray a little bit of self-etching primer on this raw metal. Not sure if that's really necessary, but I don't want this to rust from the inside if that is a thing. Now for this ballast box, I did purchase 6 bags that were 60 pounds a piece of ready mix concrete, so that's 660 pounds, and I do think I used all but a couple pounds of that last one, so we're sitting somewhere right around that 660 pounds in the end. I honestly am not exactly sure where it's at. It would be interesting to weigh that. I am going to be adding some fiber strands into this concrete to make sure it doesn't bust apart on us over time, but I'm also cutting some chicken wire. I don't think this is actually called chicken wire, but I think you get the point, that will go inside, deeply inside the concrete box to, again, just to add some extra strength. Protecting myself with a respirator here because concrete is rather nasty when it's floating around in dust form. And we're just going to mix it up in the wheelbarrow, add the fiber strands, make sure it's mixed in very well, and then dump it into the box. I think it took me 5-6 wheelbarrow fulls to get the whole thing full.
I want to take a quick pause and talk to you about shoes real quick because my feet are cold, because I just took these off. Now these are the S117s. These are slip-on. They have a steel toe in there. I actually think it's an aluminum toe. Very great. Wear these for my work job. You guys have obviously seen these boots in this actual video. These are the 28s that I've had for a long time. Lots of love in these, and I actually just put the new AG8 Carolina footbed in there. You can get those accessories at carolinashoe.com. And then you've seen these. They have 800 grams of thin slit insulation in them. Wear these when I go hunting. They're great for walking through the snow and then climbing up a ladder. Lots of grip right there. You guys can save 25% off using the code DIYTyler. Link down in the description below on various select pairs of shoes that rotate through on that link. So if you don't see something you like, check back later. It might be there. Use the code DIYTyler to save 25% off. Thanks, Carolina, for sponsoring the channel.
I did screed out the top a little bit to make sure it was nice and smooth and looked well, and then I used my reciprocating saw without a blade in it to try to vibrate the sides a little bit to try to work out any bubbles and make sure we had a relatively smooth side. As you can see, I did have to add some clamps because the box was kind of trying to blow itself apart, so a couple of parallel clamps made sure all of our concrete stayed in the box where we wanted it to be. Now this is a very big chunk of concrete, so you want to make sure you give it adequate time to dry and then adequate time to cure or completely set up. Not sure what the proper terminology is, but I waited 24 to 36 hours before removing the wood, and it was at a state where I could basically rub away big chunks of concrete if I wanted to. So after removing the box, it was probably 3 to 4 weeks before we actually added the epoxy coating on the outside or really moved or used this concrete block. You can see where there are some bigger chunks actually taken away, like the bottom right corner and right at the top, kind of in the middle there, and that's from where I was trying to clean things up a little prematurely and the concrete wasn't fully cured, so I was able to remove bigger chunks than I wanted to. So again, you want to make sure it is fully cured before actually putting this to use. It is a big block of concrete. Cleaning up any dirt or sand, making sure it's off of there, and then I'm mixing up a 2-part polyacrylic that is actually used for interior or exterior countertops. This is what we use for the outdoor kitchen on our deck. This is what I had remaining, and we had just enough to seal all the way around the sides of this block. And I can tell you without a doubt that having this 660 pounds hanging off the back of the tractor makes a ginormous difference in the stability of the tractor. Especially when lifting close to the capacity of the front loader, it feels very, very stable, very, very centered, so much safer for its use, much better traction when moving or scraping dirt with the bucket. And as you can see here with the front loader, when I lift up the auger, which is not a light piece of machinery, the tractor doesn't even bounce around at all. So very excited to have this as a attachment for Jonathan the tractor, and it will be put to good use around our homestead.
Well, there we go, my friends. 660 pounds of concrete. We're probably sitting somewhere around 670 pounds with all the metal in there. And as I said before, I got $30 into the pins in the receiver tube, $30 into the concrete, so that is $60 right there. You can get a metal box to then put concrete in for about $300 from what I can find. There are some diagrams, plans, link in the description below if you're so interested in building one of these. This will go on any Category 1 hitch on any style of tractor. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hammer that thumbs up button as it helps us out and gets this video in front of more eyes. I'm DIYTyler. You guys have a good one.